we can start from another section related to the industrial minerals. Actually, what I want to talk today is just some common aspects related with or geology or the mineral resources, and some aspects related with some considerations related with their mining. Okay, economic considerations. So that is also part of your course. Therefore, today I intend to go on that way. So let me share you my presentation. uh, is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. So since we are talking about industrial minerals, so can you just tell me what industrial minerals are? How I mean, how can you explain it when somebody says industrial minerals? Because you know minerals already, right? So minerals, we know that it's a naturally, there is a definition for minerals. Okay, let's just start with that then. So what is the definition for minerals? As gemology students, you must know this. I think you have already learned about that. How do you define the minerals?
Natural occurring inorganic.
Yeah, naturally occurring an inorganic compound which has a definite chemical composition, right? Okay, so that is the definition of mineral. So these minerals can be of different types. There are several categories, silicates, oxides, sulfates, sulfides, hydroxides, like that, right? So there are many types of minerals, and out of those, some are we call rock forming minerals, and some of course are classified as gem minerals, and also some of them are related or included as industrial minerals. But in this industrial minerals, the term, there is actually there is no real or very strict definition, because it is applied in various ways in some cases. It's always not the real mineral. Sometimes some aggregates of minerals are also called industrial minerals, right? For example, if you make some product using some aggregates, like for example, uh, like something like concrete like thing, right? In one way, one can consider concrete is also as an industrial mineral, as long as it is used for industrial purposes. So as you know, normally the industrial minerals, very common ones, we can consider as calcite, marble, dolomite like things also, right? Even sand is considered as a industrial mineral. But sand is not just a mineral, it is out of the definition of the mineral. But sand, because sand contains various types of minerals, right? It's a kind of an aggregate, it's a collection of different types. But still we use industrial mineral as sand also, right? Sand mining, that is one type of industrial mineral exploration. Okay, so therefore this is a kind of a very broad term that is used for various materials. Okay, not only just strictly defined minerals. So anyway, so in this course, the lectures that I am going to take, I will do some common aspects and some economic considerations related with industrial minerals, right? Okay, so before that, we'll go to some frequently used terminologies. That means some terms or some words that are used very frequently in this field. O. O. How do you define an O? O. What do you mean by O? Have you heard of O before? What about an O? Okay, O is a mineral deposit, right? O, O means a deposit, a mineral deposit. Okay, so mineral deposit means a place where some minerals are concentrated, which can be extracted for our usage. That is an O. It's a sometimes we call O deposit, or sometimes we call mineral deposit. Is it clear? The definition.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so O means it's a technical term, so that you have to know it's a concentrated area where a particular mineral or material is accumulated. That is, which is extractable also, right? Which should be extractable also, right? Okay, so the minerals which are found in that particular location, or that particular concentrated area, or the ore deposit, we call ore minerals. So whatever the minerals that you can extract from that are called ore minerals. So the majority, for example, if you consider about a gold deposit, right? You can say that ore deposit is in this case gold deposit, where the ore mineral is gold. Okay, the extractable mineral is gold. So in addition, that is the major mineral that you can extract from that particular deposit. But of course, not only gold, in addition to gold, there may be some other minerals also. For example, silver can be there, lead also can be there, but those are not major in that particular case, right? There may be very minor amounts. You can find gold or silver or lead also. So in that case, not only those, maybe sometimes you can find quartz or some feldspars or some other minerals, sulfite, some other minerals also, right? So but those are not major minerals which are found in that ore deposit, so therefore we call them gangue minerals. Okay, gangs or gangue minerals, right? GANGUE. So the major mineral is the ore mineral. In addition to that, whatever amount, whatever in lesser amounts you can find, that mean minor amounts, which is not in large quantities, you can't extract them at there. So then we call them gangue minerals. Okay, so maybe you have a zinc deposit where ore mineral is zinc, but there may be gangue minerals like gold. So likewise, whatever the mineral that you can find in very minor amounts, that is you call gangue minerals. Okay, so that is another term that we normally use in ore geology. uh, and another two terms are there, resource and reserve. So what is resource? Resource means a collection of a mineral like ore deposit, that is again similar. It's a synonym like ore deposit or resource or mineral resource. That is also same. But reserve is little bit different. Of course, it is also the accumulation of that particular mineral or mineral, but it is profitable and technically uh, extractable, right? So if you have a deposit where some mineral can be extractable profitably, that is what you call a reserve, right? Sometimes there are resources which are not extractable, right? Some mineral resources are there, but always they are not extractable, right? Due to various reasons, maybe technical problems, maybe environmental problems, maybe legal problems. So many things are there, right? So in such cases, as a very common term, you can use a resource for a ore deposit or mineral deposit. So that's why we call them mineral resources or something like that. But once that particular location or the site or the resource become extractable, then it can be termed as reserve, a mineral reserve. Okay, so once you have a extractable, a profitably extractable ore deposit, then you can call it a reserve, mineral reserve. So this is a kind of a technical term, but very slight difference is there between resource and reserve. So you just keep in mind that resource may not be always extractable, right? But it is an accumulation of a particular mineral. Then the materials that you take out from a deposit or a reserve we call commodities. Okay, it's not the common commodities that we have in our day-to-day life, but these are all commodities or mineral commodities that you can extract from a mineral deposit. For example, metals you can find, right? Yes, gold, silver, aluminium, or coal. The material that you can find from a coal deposit is coal, right? Crude oil can also be found in some cases. For example, some shale, some rock types called shale, they have reserves of oil, right? Crude oil. Later on, only we refine them to make petrol or diesel or kerosene or whatever the other types of oil. But the initial type of oil that you have in the rock layers, inside the rock layers, like shale, the rock, it is one of the rock types which can store oil, is crude oil, right? And iron ore, for example, iron deposits. There are some iron deposits in Sri Lanka also, iron ores. We call them iron ore because iron can be extractable from such reserves. Do you know any place where we have iron ore in Sri Lanka? Have you heard?
Yes, Muttala.
Very good. Yes, in Buttala you have iron ore. What is the type of mineral there?
That is magnetite.
Magnet. Yes, that is magnetite. So you have magnetite deposits in Buttala. So that is an iron ore. It's a kind of mountain-like places are there, full of iron. Okay, but in some minerals that you can find in our garden, for example, some feldspar or some other minerals that you can frequently find from the river beds or in your garden even, still iron is there, right? Iron is there, Fe is there, iron is there, but we don't consider them as reserves or deposits. Why? They are not economically extractable. Okay, you can't get iron from there economically. You can get iron, but it's very hard to accumulate those iron to be used as an industrial purpose. So therefore we never regard them as deposits, or I mean reserves. We don't consider them as reserves. Okay, or ores, we don't consider them. Okay, another some terminologies are there: prospecting, exploration, and development. Okay, and mining, you already know mining is just exploration. I mean the digging inside to take out the material from our deposits. That is mining. So what is prospecting then? What do you call prospecting for what? Prospecting. So we call mineral prospecting. Actually, this is mineral prospecting means we are in search of mineral deposits, right? So potential areas, finding potential areas for mineral resources is called prospecting, right? Because mineral deposits are mostly underground, right? You can't see them easily. Maybe it's forested area or even not non-forested area, you can still see the mineral deposits because they are inside. So you have to dig, you have to mine them. But how to find which place you want to mine? That is the that is the activity we are doing under prospecting, right? So we use different techniques. You will learn about these things separately. So for prospecting there are different ways. For example, geophysical methods, geochemical methods, or some other methods, traditional methods. We try to apply those methods to prospect the areas for mining. That means we are going to search the areas where some potential is there for mineral deposits. Once you have such evidence, okay, that potential is there here for magnetite, then you try to dig into the earth where you can find the mineral deposits, right? In the Buttala case, of course, you don't have to prospect much because they are already mountains like features, right? Mountain means already like hillock like places. That means the surrounding rock has gone out, withered or and eroded, so that the harder magnetite part has remained there. So that is uprising there because the surrounding part has gone after weathering. Otherwise you will have to dig, of course, right? So even the other areas around Buttala where you don't see mountains like features, you may have to prospect. You will have to prospect whether real magnetite layers are there or not, right? That is prospecting. And after prospecting, what you have to do is so some areas you suspect that there may be mineral deposits, then you have to explore in details, right? Exploration. But some cases prospecting and exploration is almost same, but exploration involves more advanced or more specific techniques. You determine the extent of a possible area or something like that. For example, now here from here on here, based on our past knowledge or some other knowledge, we say that Buttala has a is a prospective area for magnetite, right? But you don't know to what extent, which in Buttala, that's a vast area, but you have to go there and explore so that you can find the specific regions where this magnetite is concentrated. Okay, so likewise the prospecting and exploration is there, which you have to use carefully because there is some slight difference. For example, if you want to find the boundaries of the mineral deposits, then you have to explore, right? You have to use a geochemical or geophysical exploration method or even mechanical exploration method. You have to dig and see. That is also possible, right? But if it's a large area, it's very difficult. But for a small area, you can just do some mechanical exploration. Okay, so that is two definitions of those two terms. And development, of course, you know, because once you explore the area, then you start mining. Or otherwise, even before mining, you have to develop the area, right? Because for mining, you have to make the background for that area. So you have to remove the forest. You have to develop the infrastructure to carry the materials once you explore the once you mine the area, or you have to bring the or mobilize the machineries to the area. So they are like you have to develop the area anyway. That is normal development. But normally exploration and development is coeval. That means almost together you have to do, because you are exploring the area and at the same time you are developing the area, because otherwise there may be difficulties in exploration also. Therefore, because for example, you have to bring the instruments, for example, geophysical instruments, magnetometers or seismometers or resistivity meters, such meters and such instruments can be have to be taken into the field for exploration. So then definitely you have to develop also. So then after everything, you mine the area, mine the selected area, or excavate the selected area. And then also you have to develop again the materials that you take out. You have to develop. That means you have to process them. You can't use them as it is in some cases, but sometimes you can use them as it is, like graphite, for example. You can just take them as raw graphite and use whatever the purpose. But sometimes you have to develop it into other products, graphene like thing. Then you take it into other forms, right? So those also include development. So anyway, these are some frequently used terms in whatever the mining industry. It doesn't mean that only in industrial minerals, but whatever the minerals that you have for exploration, then you may be able to use them, these terminologies. And one more thing is there, that is units. Normally we use the grade. The term grade is used for a mineral deposit. Okay, the grade means how the amount that can be extractable. That is the grade. For example, if you have some gold deposit and you calculate the grade of that deposit based on the productivity, right? Maybe 1 gram per ton, right? When you excavate 1 metric ton of material, you get 1 gram of gold, like that. That is equal to 1 ppm, right? So that means parts per million, right? Because ton is 10 to the power 6, ton is 10 to the power 6 grams, okay? 1000 kilograms, 10 to the power 6 grams, 1 metric ton. So if you have 1 gram per ton means it's 1 ppm, right? Concentration is 1 ppm. So whether you have to, then you have to decide whether this is economical or not also. Because to explore 1 metric ton of material, you might have to invest a large sum of money, but you are getting 1 gram of gold, okay? So whether it is economical or not. So for different elements, for different materials, so minerals, this grade is different, right? For example, for gold, if at least there are 4-5 ppm per ton, sorry, ppm, 4-5 ppm, that means 4-5 grams per ton. If you have, normally people exploit, right? Because you can accumulate some amount of gold there, which is very expensive. So therefore, maybe it's economical, profitable, right? So depending on the material that you are extracting, and also the expenditure you have to spend, you have to decide whether it is economical or not, right? So therefore, grade is important in exploration. Okay. So is it clear, these some basic terms? Because you have to be familiar with these things when you deal with these industrial minerals also. Okay. So so now we'll just consider some important ores and deposits where you have different types, right? Have you learned about these things before? Native ores. If you have learned, I can go very quickly. Native ores. Has anyone?
No, sir.
You haven't. You haven't,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we call native ores. Why do we call native ores? Because they are naturally occurring minerals. Naturally occurring. Sorry, mineral is normal, naturally occurring. But here, what we find is the element, right? It's not a compound. It's an element, right? Gold is an element. So we get these elements out of it. So those are native ores. Sometimes we call native element ores also, right? Gold, copper, platinum. These are these are expensive ores. Copper is not that expensive, but still expensive. Uh, Platinum, gold, like things are very expensive. In addition, what we have is PGEs. In addition to platinum, there are some other elements behaving similar to platinum. These are called platinum group elements, PGE, right? For example, ruthenium, rhodium, palladium, uh, iridium, osmium, like elements. You can see the, you can search for PGEs in the Google, then you will get these things. And also in the periodic table, you can see these things where they are located. They are closely located also. Close to gold, silver place. Okay. Then we have base metal ores. Base metal ores, that means base metals, basic composition metals. For example, aluminium like things, Shara Lohakian, right? So those are called some deposits we call bauxite, right? It's a very typical mineral deposit where we extract aluminium. The composition is aluminium hydroxide, right? Gibbsite is also same, right? So it's a mixture of aluminium hydroxides and some other hydroxides. Some magnesium is also mixed in bauxite deposits, but gibbsite is pure aluminium hydroxide. Then hematite, iron oxide, and magnetite, ferric oxide, right? Ferroso ferric oxide. So these are some base metal oxides, right? And another group is sulfides. So sulfide ores are there, very common in the world. Sulfide ores, different types of ores are there in the world, and you can have mostly some of these expensive minerals. Some of these expensive minerals are in the form of sulfides. For example, silver sulfide. Okay, silver sulfide, that is called argentite, and copper sulfide, bonite, right? It's iron mixed sulfide, and chalcopyrite, iron copper sulfide, chalcocite, copper sulfide, cinnabar, that is mercury sulfide, lead, it's galena, it's lead sulfide, and sphalerite. Sphalerite means zinc sulfide. Okay, so likewise sulfide ores are also there, right? So these are very common types of ores that we have in the world. Then oxide ores are also there. Oxide ores, for example, uraninite. Uraninite is an oxide ore, that is uranium oxide. Okay, titanium oxide, ilmenite is titanium oxide. Okay, so these are oxides. Some other oxides are also there, but these are very common types of minerals, ore minerals. And some other deposits are there which are actually uh, not a real metal, right? Carbon, it's carbon is the, in terms of diamond you can find, or graphite, right? Graphite is also there, so you can have the graphite also. Graphite is occurring not very deep, right? But for diamond you need to have great depths, right? Great depths. That's why in this the special magma type, this is a magma which is coming from the Earth's interior, molten rocks, kimberlite, that is coming from very deep part of the Earth, right? Very close to the Earth's mantle. So I think you have learned about the Earth structure, crust, mantle, and core, and you can understand the relative locations when I say that very deep part of the mantle. Okay, some 100 200 kilometers depth from the surface, right? So these are called kimberlite. It's a special type of magma, not the normal magma that you can see in volcanic eruptions. That is very shallow magma. It's some tens of kilometers down only, right? Those magmas are not containing diamond. Those are shallow magma. These kimberlites are deep magma which carry diamond, because once this graphite and some organic components which contains carbon goes into the Earth's interior by different processes, subduction like processes in the Earth's crust, they convert into carbon first, the graphite first. Okay, that is also carbon. Then if these materials go more and more deeper, their structures get changed. The structural changes happening. That means the lattice becomes changed. Okay, becomes more harder, that is converted into diamond. Okay, so these diamonds are found in the Earth's mantle, and these mantle diamonds are brought upwards by these kimberlite magmas. So these are very hot magma which is coming from very deep part of the Earth. So they carry diamond deposits. So these deposits you can find on the surface because of this magma, because they are bringing upward this magma. Like some magma brings gem minerals, right? Pegmatites, pegmatites contain some gems. But actually, the process is different. Pegmatite gem formation is different from diamond formation, because diamond is already formed there, which is just brought only. It's just a carrier only. But in the case of gem mineral formation in pegmatite, it's as a result of cooling, slow cooling, right? It's a crystallization process. But this is not just crystallization. Already crystallized diamond is there in the deep interior, and which is just brought by the kimberlite magmas. So all these things can be considered as metallic ore deposits. Okay, metallics. Carbon sometimes we ignore, saying that it is metallic, but sometimes it is included due to some conductivity properties, which is similar to metals. But you can consider as an intermediate thing to metallic or non-metallic, right? So anyway, these are metallic deposits or metallic ores, and the other ones we have non-metallic ores. So what are the non-metallic ores? So for example, quartzite, uh, quartzite, so quartz, calcite, marble, dolomite, feldspar, sand or heavy sand, apatite, etc. Right? These are non-metallics. Actually, these group you can consider as industrial minerals. Right? These are pure minerals, normal minerals, oxides, sulfides, or whatever. But these are I mean, they go away from the definition of minerals also, because sand is not a mineral, right? Because it's an aggregate product, right? It contains various types of minerals, so therefore it's not a single mineral, but you just use the single term sand as an industrial mineral, right? Sand mining means industrial meaning mining, mineral mining, right? So that is how this industrial mineral term is defined, as I mentioned at the very beginning. So this is also same, the marble is a collection of some minerals like calcite, right? Calcite and olivine, magnesium carbonate, calcium carbonate, all these things, right? So therefore it's called an industrial mineral. But sometimes when since these calcite deposits are there, which are economically extractable, and also they are different from metals because they do not conduct electricity, right? So therefore these are called industrial minerals also, some cases, right? So that's why I mentioned that the term industrial minerals has no very specific meaning. Okay, so then what you have, dolomite is calcium magnesium carbonate. Okay, calcium and magnesium carbonate, uh, which you can find in marble, the rock marble. You know, sandstone, limestone. The limestone is what type of a rock type? Have you heard of, have you learned about the rock types?
Yes.
Yeah,
Limestone is a sedimentary.
very good. Yeah, limestone is a sedimentary rock. Sedimentary rock, when it becomes metamorphic, that means when it is brought to the deeper conditions, that means higher pressure and higher temperature conditions, it converts into a more robust rock. That is what you call marble. Kirigarunda kiyanne this one. Okay, so limestone, Hunugal changes into a more robust form, that is marble, after metamorphism. So same as quartzite also, quartz and quartzite. Quartz is a dominant mineral you have in quartzite. This is sandstone. Okay, metamorphosed sandstone. Sandstone is a sedimentary rock, veligal, right? So when it was metamorphosed, it converts into a more robust rock type that you call Thiruvana. So that is quartzite. Okay, quartz is the mineral. It's just the mineral name, but quartz can also be extracted from deposits. Therefore, we consider quartz also as an industrial mineral. Okay, so similarly we have feldspar. Okay, some feldspars are there. Sometimes you might have heard amazonite, something called amazonite. It's a very green type of feldspar, green color. That is also considered as an industrial mineral. So what are heavy sand? Sand you know already. So what is heavy sand? What do you mean by heavy sand? The term itself should indicate something to related with density, right? Higher density sand. A type of higher density sand is heavy sand. So give me an example for heavy sand. Any example for heavy sand? Has anyone gone to Pulmude area? Has anyone gone to Pulmude area, Trincomalee, north of Trincomalee?
No, sir.
You haven't gone. So in Pulmude, what do you have? There's a famous place. Even in the school, you learn about that. Pulmude, what do you have?
Ghana,
No.
ilmenite,
Very good. Ilmenite. Ilmenite is a the deposit. Ilmenite deposit we have in Pulmude, right? It's in the beach. It's in the shore. Huge amount of ilmenite, tons, for many years. I think for decades, we have been mining them. Right? There are a lot of ilmenite deposits there. Right? You should search them and see ilmenite deposits in Pulmude. So those are heavy sand because they are higher density. So that's why they are accumulated also because of high density. They are get accumulated in the coastal regions. So not only ilmenite, rutile, and some zircons also are there. Right? Those are heavy compared to the normal sand. Right? River sand or sea sand, beach sand, normal sand, because those are full of quartz and feldspars. They are not very heavy, but the ilmenite, rutile, zircon like things are heavy. So that's why we call them heavy sand. Okay, so that is also considered as a industrial mineral. So has anyone gone to Beruvala and find some type of heavy sand there in Beruvala, a different type? Can anybody tell me in Beruvala? So in addition to ilmenite, rutile, zircon, those are available in Pulmude. There is another one common type of heavy sand, which is not available in Pulmude in big quantities. There are some, but not big quantities. But in Beruvala, you have it. In Beruvala, you don't see ilmenite, rutile in big quantities. There are, but not much. But the other mineral is there in abundant amounts. No idea? It starts with M. Can anybody?
Magnetite?
Sorry?
Magnetite?
No, it's not magnetite. It starts with MO. Beruvala is a famous place in the beach and some southwestern coast also. It's monazite. Have you heard of monazite? Monazite. No? You haven't heard of monazite? I think you better search some of these heavy sands, okay, in the Google and some other sources. Monazite is a phosphate. It's a rare earth element phosphate. Okay, lanthanum cerium bearing phosphate. Okay, so that is available in Beruvala. So it's also in the beach. So as an aggregate. So therefore, that is also considered as an industrial mineral. So anyway, those are non-metallic ores which you can find in various regions, and the other ones are the metallic ones, which also you can find in different areas. Right? Everywhere you don't see these things, and only in some parts of the world also you have these deposits in large quantities. So that's why some countries like Canada, Australia, Russia, they are very rich because of these mineral deposits. They are rich in these deposits, right? So therefore, though everything is not concentrated in everywhere. Only in some areas you have this one. Okay. So these are the main types of ore deposits that you can find in the world. And once you have located or explored in a prospective search these deposits, so if you identify them, then you can locate the area, okay, for getting the commodities. The mineral commodities means the the materials that you are taking out from the deposit. For example, if it's a gold deposit, you are taking gold out of it. If it's a galena deposit, then you are taking it out lead, right? Although it is lead sulfide, right? So you have to process it also, right, to separate lead from lead sulfide. Okay, so like that, you have to take the commodities out from the mineral deposit. So anyway, the first step is the prospecting. That is the finding places where these ores occur. Okay, prospecting. And then you have to go for exploration and development, mineral exploration and development, as I mentioned before. So we have to find the exact location or exact boundaries of these mineral deposits, that is exploration. And to consider, you have to develop the area also at the same time, for us to be able to extract these minerals economically. So this is very important, economical extraction. Otherwise there is no point of extracting the mineral deposits. There are some mineral deposits which are unattended by people, right? In the world there are some places, of course there are very very precious deposits are there, but those are unattended. The reason is maybe they are very very deep, or they are very difficult to transport, or very difficult to extract. So therefore, uh, in that cases, those are not economical. So therefore, if the mineral deposit is economical, then you can consider it for exploration and development. Okay, so then once you decide that it is economical, after initial tasks of development, then only you can go for mining. Okay, if for example you have to decide the extent, the depth, the volume and everything of the mineral, and also purity, you can extract some little portion, some little amount, and then you have to assess it, right? After that only you can decide whether you go for extensive mining or not. Okay, so extracting ore from the ground is the mining process, so which should be economical. Otherwise you will give up the thing. And the beneficiation, so the benefit, so whether it is beneficial to extract, has to be also considered. Separate ore minerals from other mined rock. For example, the once you have the ground identified, you have to mine everything, right? You have to mine the soil, rocks, everything, right? Then you have to separate out your commodities. Your commodities have to be separate out from those things. So there you have a lot of ore mineral. In addition, you have gangue minerals, as I mentioned, and also you have some other unnecessary waste materials. Okay, and also you have impurities also, right? So therefore you have to separate out your commodity, otherwise you can't give a value for them, right? So if your gold is stuck in the rock, then its value becomes low, although it is gold. For example, there are some gems found in the rock itself. So if you can't separate out the gem, then it's just only ornamental things people can use, right? You have to be able to separate out it without breaking, or without destructing the material, right? So that is also important. That is what we consider as beneficiation. And then refining. So once you extract them or separate out, so you have to extract the pure commodity from the ore mineral. That means the pure extraction, refinery thing, right? Although you separate out, there may be still impurities, right? So you have to remove the all impurities out, and then only you can take it as a pure commodity. And then once you do everything, maybe you can do that on site, or you have to take it out and do it in other places, right? So transportation may be on site or after that. So that obviously that means the carrying the commodity to the market. Okay, so then obviously what you have is marketing and sales, right? So you have to do a marketing survey and strategies to sell these things, and getting orders from manufacturers like that. So everything comes under some parts of uh, mining. Maybe each and every section is not attended by the same person or the same company. Okay, there may be multiple companies involved also, right? There can be multiple companies involved also. But anyway, the overall process should be economical. So the end product may be very expensive when you consider all these intermediate steps, right? So that means the person who is mining at the very early steps of this process may be getting a very limited margin, very limited profit. The person who is marketing, or the selling person, might be getting the highest profit, because at his hand the product is very pure and also clean, and what you have to do is only finding strategies, right? So they will employ various strategies and also various value additions to the product, so that you can make it very very expensive, and also it becomes at the same time uh, coming as a higher margin also. Okay, so these are the steps in obtaining mineral commodities, whatever the type of mineral that you are considering. Okay, so this all this process, as I mentioned before, each and every step should be profitable, right? Even if you have some steps which are causing loss of income of the people who are involved there, the process will not go smoothly. Okay, this process might not go smoothly if some losses are there. So therefore everybody who are involved in this industry must be uh, getting some profit, otherwise this is not a sustainable industry. So that's why some of the graphite mines are abundant in Sri Lanka. You know, there are so many graphite mines which were located during the colonial times, because those English people were in search of mineral deposits in Sri Lanka, and they found, of course, a lot of graphite areas, graphite. I mean the prospective areas for graphite. For example, Bulat Sinhala, Matugama, that type of areas. There are a lot of graphite occurrences. So they started mining, but somehow later on, after the independence, I think people did not manage them very well. So they have to abandon it due to the loss. But nowadays, I think some foreign companies again have come to Sri Lanka to find graphite deposits, because now the graphene, the product graphene, has a very very big demand. It's very expensive. So once it's refined and come into this stage from the graphite, from here the graphite may be very very cheap, right? 1 kilo maybe some only hundreds of rupees. But when it comes to this region, 1 kg of graphite, or 1 kg of converted graphite into graphene, becomes some thousand, no, 100 times greater than that price per kilo. Graphene is very very expensive. So the people who are dealing in this area in the industry will be getting very very high profit. That's why I mentioned, right? So if we have the technology, we should be able to do all these conversions, and up to the end point, all these strategies, then we will get a lot of money. But now what we do is just selling them at raw most of the cases, right? That is same in Pulmude also. The mineral sand, they contain ilmenite rutile, right? So what is rutile? It's titanium bearing. So this titanium is very expensive metal. Titanium is required for airplane industry. So, and also paint industry. But we do not extract titanium from rutile. We just export them at raw. That is the thing. So therefore, it's very very. It's a losing game for us we are sending them at very low price, maybe some 700 rupees per kilogram or something like that, right? But once it is bought by the foreign people and they convert them into metals like titanium, they earn a lot from them. Okay, is it clear up to this point?
Yes,
Any
sir.
any questions do you have? Okay, if no questions, we can move further a little bit. So, as I mentioned before, the mining should be economic. So that is the main important thing. Whatever the mining, industrial mineral or metallic or whatever the mineral type that you are going to mine, it must be economic activity. So the decision to mine or not to mine totally depends on the cost analysis. Okay, the cost analysis should be done in advance. You have to predict the cost and benefits and risks also. You have to consider the risks also, because during mining there can be a lot of risks associated, right? Mines can collapse, people can die, so you have to give compensation for them. You have to find health facilities for the employees, because you are working under uh, no oxygen environments, maybe in the underground, right? You have to make sure your employees are protected and they are fully insured, right? So all these things are there. So that's why all these products are very expensive. The mining products are very expensive, and at the same time mining jobs carry big salaries also because of this risk. Okay, mining industry is a very risky industry and also very dangerous for the health. So therefore, to compensate that to some extent, in the world, mining industry has attracted high salaries. So therefore, still people are going for that, despite the risk. Of course, benefits are there because you are extracting a kind of a rare material. So therefore, it will be beneficial and also it will be costly, right? So therefore you can have the ultimate, people can have a huge margin also, right? So that is the main thing you have to consider before mining. I mean, this is the economic thing that you have to consider, right? Future prices, maybe prices are fluctuating, right? For example, gold, today maybe gold is very expensive, but maybe in future, some years later, it can drop depending on the market trend. And also the cost of energy, infrastructure, labor, processing, and everything is very important for this cost analysis. And environmental protection and cleanup is also important. Once you have finished mining, then you have to fill it, the landfill the area, and also take measures for environment to be protected also, right? You have to reforest, you have to replant, you have to develop some sanitary or some other facilities for the people who are in the surrounding. So likewise, there are so many things involved in mining. Of course, these things are not much well taken care of in Sri Lanka, because people do illegal mining also, right? In countries like Sri Lanka, India, and South Asian countries, this is not happening very well anyway. Always environmentally damaging acts are there with related to mining. But in developed countries, all these conditions are well monitored, and no one can just leave the mining site after exploration or after extraction of the material. They have to do the developments for the protection in terms of society, livelihood, and environmental aspects. So anyway, considering all these expensive tasks related with mining, of course you have to consider the grade for your cost analysis, right? Type of deposit and type of processes feasible, right? Also processes are also very important, because all the materials might be not in a good form to be processed in a very common method. So sometimes you have to go for a specific method to process them, to separate them, the commodity out, right? And also there can be some special environmental problems rather than having the common environmental problems. There may be some specific environmental problems in relation to the metals, for example, the contamination, groundwater pollution, something like that, right? All these things, measures have to be well taken care of. Otherwise, it's very difficult task. So some of these considerations are tangible. Some of these are intangible, right? What is tangible and intangible? So you can you may feel, you can feel the feel the effect of that, right? For example, profit you can really feel whether you are losing or profiting, right? But intangible ones, it's like perceptions, spiritual, something like that, right? Some feelings, right? Whether it will go for damage, environmental damage, or mankind damage, or something like that. In the future, problems it might arise, or something like that. You are just thinking, visualizing, or you are just predicting, something like that. So these are intangible considerations. So all these things have to be consideration also, right? Which are affecting the economy also, right? You know, sometimes when the mining, if one country finds a very big deposit of say gold or silver, something like that, even soon after you hear that news, what happens is your your exchange rates, foreign exchange rates, become very strong, right? But you haven't still explored it. I mean, you haven't started mining even. You, even before selling the commodity, your exchange rate becomes very strong, something like that, right? Dollar rate becomes very strong. For example, the one of the very famous example in the recent history was the oil story in Sri Lanka, right? I think you can remember a few years ago, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, there was a huge gossip or huge discussion among the Sri Lankan society and also international society, that Sri Lanka has found petroleum in the uh, Mena Basin, right? Actually, there was a drilling was ongoing by a foreign company, uh, and they found some gas deposits, but they revealed it, and the government also wanted to reveal it as they found petroleum, right? Of course, only the gas was there. Still, oil was not found there. So what government wanted to do is they just plotted the area and wanted to sell different grids to different companies. So some companies bidded for that, and they got the areas, but they found nothing so far, right? So there was a huge demand for that, because finding petroleum means you are getting a strong boost for your economy. So at that time, just after that news, the time where the shares were selling, what happens was the exchange rate was heavily fluctuated, right? So it makes an international influence if you find this type of things. So that is very sensitive thing, this economic ore deposits, finding ore deposits, because those are very expensive. Gold, platinum, petroleum, like things are very expensive. So therefore, if you find them means definitely your economy will be boosted in the near future. Right. So so this is totally an economic activity. That's why we call it a total economic activity. So when we go for prospecting little more details, that is what you call the finding ores, finding ore deposits, where they occur. Some important factors are there. That means you have to consider some geological setting of the region. You have to consider geologic aspects very much, right? Because these ore deposits are controlled by totally geological factors. So underlying geological processes, not the current process. I mean, not day to day or in the recent past processes, right? These may have happened some millions of years ago, some hundreds of million years ago sometimes. For example, the graphite deposits found in Sri Lanka were not very recent deposits. They are as old as about 400 to 500 million years time, right? 500 million years time. So at that time, there has been some geological processes underlying, and also the Sri Lanka was not like here, not like this landmass at that time. So anyway, this crustal, the Earth's crust moving, which causes a lot of changes in the interior. So these changes are associated with uh, depositing of these type of mineral deposits. We will learn about these things, some some of these mineral, some of these processes later on. We, in general, we term them as tectonic processes. Okay, tectonic processes. So have you heard about this term tectonic processes previously? Has someone taught you about tectonic processes? Do you remember some of those terms, tectonic processes? I need your feedback, whether you are there or not. I don't know. Are you there?
Yes, tectonic process mean some sort of pressure due to the pressure difference, the surface tectonics are changed.
Yes, it's not actually the surface processes. Surface also can be included in some cases, but all these things are happening in the deep interior. For example, convection, mantle convection. The heat flows from the mantle, Earth's mantle. That means some 100 kilometers or at least 80 kilometers deep in the Earth's interior. These heat sources are coming up. So these heat sources exert pressure and some force beneath the overlying crust. So crust, on top of that we are standing. So this crust is as thick as about 30-40 kilometers, and this crust at the basement can be pushed by these mantle heat flows, right? It's something like that. When you boil a pot of water, if you put some ink drops to the bottom of the kettle, you will see those ink drops are moving because of convection, right? Heat forces, convective transfer. So that means that is able to transport the material. So similarly, this mechanism is applied in the Earth's interior also, because magma becomes the mantle becomes very ductile with that high temperature. So therefore they exert pressure uh, uh, as a force at the base of the crust. So therefore this crust moves in different directions, so that some forces are generated because of this movement of the crustal fragments. Okay, so because of that, sometimes the crust becomes fractured, sometimes they become accumulated together, collision, subduction, everything is happening, right? So because of that, uh, sometimes in some settings only some mineral deposits can form also. So that is the tectonic controlled mineral deposits in the Earth's interior. So therefore this knowledge about the association of ores with specific geological settings is important. Okay, so we will see some of those examples later on with some diagrams. So people can use the techniques of different methods of geophysical or geochemical or some other techniques to prospect the mineral deposits. Prospect means finding where these ores occur. Okay, so you can use remote sensing techniques. Remote sensing means we are sensing something remotely, right? We do not go to the close by, and we do not touch it, but at the remote distance we are observing something by means of a technique. For example, satellite imagery, seismic reflections, magnetic field intensities, gravity anomalies, gravity changes. Using these techniques, we can understand or we can detect geological structures, underline changes or underline nature of the geological layers, rock layers. You can understand. If it is there in the surface, of course, you can see and understand. But in the interior, you can't see. You don't know where the rocks are occurred there, and whether the rocks are fractured, or whether the rocks are how they are behaved some in the past. You don't know. To understand that, we have to use these remote sensing techniques, right? uh, on the surface you can use, of course, photos to find faults. And faults means some movement, relative movement. For example, if you have a rock layer like this, okay, suppose you have a rock layer here, and if this layer has moved upward or downward due to some tectonic force, right? That means if some force was there acting upon the layer, this layer can be fragmented here. So this fragmented layer can be moved. So this region becomes very weak. Okay, this region becomes very weak. So this weak region, into this weak region, some magma from the interior can come up and deposit in this weak region. Okay, so that magma can carry some important elements, and those elements, once cooling, because these are hot magma, during cooling they can deposit and crystallize. So some mineral deposit can form. And also some hydrothermal solutions, that means heated water, can circulate through these fractures or these weak zones. They can deposit materials, right? So likewise, these identifying these faults is important because they are potential sites for mineral deposits. Okay, so on the surface also you can find these features. So then you can go for such areas and identify them, and you can start mining in this region. Okay, you can start mining in this region for mineral deposits. So likewise, you have to find whether on the surface or underground, different structures. Okay, and some basaltic intrusions. Basaltic means some rock, it's a igneous rock. It's a magma which can intrude. Similarly, this magma can intrude into the fractures or weak zones of rock layers, right? So if you have a fracture here, this magma can come into that and intrude there, right, and deposit here, right? So they can produce some mineral deposits. So likewise, there can be formations. So where you have normally dense ore bodies, right? So once you have a deposit like this, that means it's a dense material accumulation. So these material might be containing a lot of elements, iron, copper, nickel, sulfur, sulfide in form of sulfide, or whatever the chemical form. So once you measure the area with some of these seismic or magnetic or gravity or electrical methods, what happens is when you do a profile exploration, uh, all of a sudden when this for example, if this is underground, so you can do this on the surface, right? On the surface you are carrying a magnetometer or whatever the instrument. If there is a deposit like here, for example, right, this is this type of a deposit. If you have underground, so you are taking the instrument on the surface or on the air even, right? So this instrument will give you a abnormal value because of this deposit. So you get an anomaly. We call it an anomaly. So anomalous signal will be given. So now we know that, okay, definitely in this region, in this area, there must be on the ground, underground, there must be something hidden, right? Because you got an anomaly there, right? It's not the normal behavior, normal pattern. Normal pattern. So you get some anomaly here. Okay, so this anomaly creates because of this mineral deposit. So now you have identified this location, and there you can do more exploration there to find the boundaries, and then afterwards you can start mining some region, and then you can find whether it is economical or not. If it is economical, then you can, I mean, you can calculate the amounts of material, and if you feel like it is economical for mining, then you can go ahead, otherwise you can just leave it out. So actually these are very expensive processes. Even if you find this type of anomaly, you might not find the material in economic quantities, or if the exploration is difficult, if the ground conditions are very, very tough, then still you have to abandon the task, although it's economic, I mean, although it's in good grade, the deposit. So but up to that point, you may have spent a lot of money for this exploration, but still nothing to do, you have to give up. So that's why this mining industry is a very expensive industry, because for exploration you have to spend a lot of money, but maybe it will end up with nothing later on. So therefore, all these risks, not only the physical risks, but also the economical or the monetary risks are also there associated with this, right? So anyway, so once you find those things, you have to develop detailed maps, rock types, geological maps, structures. You have to identify folds. So what is the difference of fault? This is fault, right? Fault means bended rock layers, right? Some rock layers are bended like this. Maybe multiple bending is there. Okay, so these layers, I mean these structures you have to identify, because some mineral deposits are concentrated in rock layers. So once the rock is bended, then this mineral deposit is also bending, right? So if you just mine here, you will find the deposit, and if you mine here again, you will find the deposit. But if you mine the same depth here, you will not find the deposit, because it is more deeper, because of this bending. So if you are unaware that this has bended layer, you are just keep mining, and then you just give up. But you may have spent a lot of money for this deep mining without getting anything, right? So if you had already analyzed the structure, so you know that this part is very deep, so maybe you don't want to spend much money there for mining, right? You can concentrate only in this area, right? So likewise, uh, all these aspects have to be considered for this development task. And some people used to develop 3D pictures of these structures, right? Some seismic profiling, or we call seismic what do you call seismographs, right? From seismographs you can identify the 3D structures, right? And depths and all. So these things must be considered whether to understand the structure of the ore deposit. Okay, and then finally, once you have identified the location and explored the area, then you can obtain the samples uh, of the ore for chemical analysis, right? So then you can identify what are the substances there uh, for in the deposit, right? So then whether it's worthwhile, I mean, if the material is composed of a lot of impurities, then maybe no point of mining also, right? So whether you can refine it, whether you can extract it as it is in pure form or something like that, you have to consider. So all these things are related with prospecting actually. Once not only just locating the area, but also evaluating the site is also considered for prospecting and exploration, right? Those things are very important. So at the very beginning stages, that means when you do the prospecting and exploration, uh, first you have to consider the tectonic settings, geological settings, as I mentioned before. Once you identify the geological settings only, you can go for all these detailed tasks. Okay, so all these detailed tasks can be accomplished for after that, right? For example, in the oil industry in Sri Lanka, surrounding the country, why don't you try to find oil in western coast, for example, of Colombo? You can just go and dig some oil wells in the ocean, but you are not doing that. But still you are not you have a port again in Trincomalee, but nobody is going there and try to find oil there. Why is that? Any guess? But people go to Mena region and look for oil. What's the reason? Why not other parts of the ocean around the country?
Due to prospecting?
Yeah, it's related with prospecting. Actually, the former knowledge and also the geological setting you have to understand first. Considering the geological setting, then there you have to find the basins. Okay, basins like features. So this type of features are not available everywhere. So once you have basins, means you have the potential of deposition. You have the potential of deposition from some millions of years, right? It's not a short time span process. Oil accumulation means it takes some hundreds of million years. So if you have a basin at least for 50 70 50 to 100 million years time, you can think of there may be some oil formed there, right? So that's why in the Mena region we call the Mena Basin, because of this region, right? It's a box strait between India and Sri Lanka. There is a huge or very broad basin there, which we call the Mena Basin, right? That's why people go there and do drilling holes to find oil, right? In that area, multiple drill holes are made to get the samples and extract the samples and to check whether these samples contain some oil bearing rock layers, right? Oil bearing rock layers means shale, right? These are sedimentary rock layers, right? This region still unmetamorphosed, so therefore you can find sedimentary age. Actually the oil is found in sedimentary strata, not in metamorphic strata, because metamorphic strata means the already sedimentary rock has undergone high pressure and temperature conditions and they are dehydrated and many changes have happened. So you will not find any oil in such terrains. So that's why you don't find oil in Sri Lankan rock terrains in the land areas, but in the Middle East areas you find oil in their rocks, because they have sedimentary rock layers, right? In sedimentary rocks only you have this type of oil. So therefore prospecting is a very important process when you go for whatever the mineral resources. Okay, so now let's see some of these geological settings that we can consider for having the mineral deposits. Some several processes underneath the earth can cause these mineral deposits. Okay, so some tectonic processes we call the processes that are taking place in the earth's interior, right? So normally, as you know, the magma which is coming from the interior basaltic. Basaltic means it's a rock type. It's a rock type which is high in magnesium, calcium, and iron. Right. So they have the potential for depositing elements in forms of, in other forms of minerals as mineral deposits. Also, they can have the solubility. They have the solubility of other elements from the surrounding rocks when this magma is moving through the rock layers, right? So rock layers are there. When this magma is moving through the rock layers, so surrounding rock also get dissolved, right, because of this magmatic action, right? Because this is a very hot magma, so it can dissolve the surrounding rocks. So these rocks contain various elements, right, including some metals. So these things can be dissolved in this magma, and the magma coming upward from here onwards will be very rich in a lot of metals. Once they become cool, they can deposit in various parts like this, right, in branches, like they can deposit the mineral ores, right? Because up when you go upwards, the temperature is low. Temperatures are low, so therefore gets cooled. Magma gets cooled, temperature drops, magma cooled, and all the dissolved materials will get precipitated. Okay, that is how these mineral deposits are formed in some rock inside some rock layers. So this magma contain some minor amounts of precious metals, although they contain minor amounts of precious metals, but because they are containing a lot of silicate materials, silica, iron, magnesium like elements are there in large quantities, but precious metals like platinum or gold, silver, copper, they contain in very little amount. But when they become concentrated, these little amounts, when they get injected into this type of fractures inside the rocks, slowly, little by little, these copper, gold, and other things, when they get precipitated, they get concentrated. It's something like you you get a salt solution or the seawater sample, and you try to evaporate it by heat, right? uh, Little by little, what happens, the salt get concentrated, right? At the very beginning, the amount of salt is the concentration in that particular water is not that much, right? Because you can't see any salt grain in it, all dissolved, right? The concentration is diluted. But when you heat, what happens is the water goes out, the salt becomes concentrated. So like that, all these metals are also get concentrated and deposited. So that's how these mineral deposits are formed. So there are so many places where you have these deposits. For example, in subducting regions. For example, this is a subducting plate. Okay, where one plate is there. So some continental plates are there. Okay, in the interior. So these plates are moving relative to each other. Sometimes they move towards each other. Okay, they move towards each other and collide. Okay, sometimes if this plate is heavier, that goes subducting the other. Okay, so this is something like that, right? So what happens is there will be some scraping like thing happening here, scraping like thing happening in this region. At the same time, some magma from the interior comes up and deposit materials in this region. So when this process continues, some sea mounds, some small mounds are produced, because this plate is moving this way, and these sea mounts are forming that way, right? Little by little, they are progressing. New sea mount is forming here, and it moves a little bit far here, and another one, new one, will be generating here. So likewise, there will be a chain of sea mounts produced, or ocean or islands produced. So like that, we call collisional mountains produced also in the crustal regions. This is in the ocean region. Ocean mounts are produced. And in the continent side, you have the normal mountains produced. So all these mountains also contains the deposits from magma, because magma is intruding from the deep interior, and this magma get deposited, as I mentioned before, and some materials are concentrated and formed as a ocean, as a ore deposit. At the same time, there can be another process which is taking place, which is hydrothermal. So in hydrothermal means in areas like some places where you have these plates moving in opposite directions, right? So two plates, there may be two plates, they are moving in opposite direction. One is moving this way, the other one is moving that way. So what happens in this region? Some vacuum is created in this region. To fill this vacuum, also some magma is coming upward from here. Okay, so this magma is coming upward. For example, here this is such place. This magma is coming up, and this magma gets close to the ocean floor. This is happening in the ocean floor, actually, right? When it comes to the close to the ocean floor, the temperatures are very low, and in that regions, what happens is the minerals are get deposited because of this cooling magma. In addition, because of heat from this magma, the underlying groundwater coming from the sea, the water is also penetrating downwards. This water gets heated, and once this water gets heated, it can scavenge some elements from the surrounding rocks, right? It's something like here, the magma get dissolved some elements. This water also can, heated water can also get dissolved materials, and this water again goes upward, circulates like this, and when it goes up, again cooling environment is there. So that water, that heated water, can deposit some mineral deposits also, right? So this water is heated, therefore we call hydrothermal solutions, hydrothermal water. This hydrothermal water, because they are hot, they can scavenge materials from the rock, and they get a kind of a solution. I mean, it's not the pure water, but it's a solution of dissolved materials. So they, when they get cool, they deposit in those regions. Okay, so therefore this thing can happen in the ocean floor. So forming mineral deposits are also kind of a process, right? And another possibility is the late fractionation of pegmatites. Pegmatite means it's again magma, but the cooling is relatively slower than this interior cooling. Okay, so they are coming very slowly upward, very slowly, and they cool very slowly. Okay, so there can be some mineral deposits formed within the magma itself, right? So a lot of gem deposits are formed because of these pegmatites, and in addition to gem deposits, some other mineral deposits can also be formed. So this is again another way of forming ore deposits, right, related with magma. So all these things are called magmatic ore deposits because they are related to magma. Yes.
So can you describe a little bit more on pegmatite?
Yeah, pegmatite is the late fractionation, actually. The magma coming from deep interior, like here, okay? The magma coming upward, and they get accumulated in the crust here as a batholith, right? So when this magma coming up like this, magma comes up, but at the shallow region, this magma stops and make a reservoir like thing, like this. So this is what we call a batholith. Okay, so this is a huge magma chamber like thing, right? And then later on, with the influx of this magma further from the downwards, this chamber becomes saturated and they cannot bear more. So the magma which was filled initially try to escape. Okay, so now this magma is little bit cooled already. So still they are going upward, little by little, very slowly, and because of that, the cooling rate is very low. Therefore, temperature drop is very little. So that means there is ample time for the minerals to grow. So if the magma is cooling very rapidly, the minerals will crystallize very rapidly also. Then they are very, very fine grains like this. But if they are cooling very slowly, these mineral grains tend to become a little bit bigger and bigger, and sometimes they continue growing like this. So therefore, these pegmatites will have very large crystals because of this slow cooling. So this happens in the very shallow crustal levels, and that's why you can easily find big clusters of minerals formed in these pockets. And also when this fractionation happens to the later stage, some materials like some elements like boron, lithium, uh, titanium like elements are still remaining in the magma because of the slow cooling without deposition or without fractionation at the interior. They are brought up to the near surface levels, and boron particularly is an essential mineral for tourmaline, right? And some other elements like lithium like things are also required for topaz, tourmaline like minerals. And also aluminum is also rich because silica is already less because of deposition or early deposition of crystals. So what happens is aluminum rich compositions are there, so that you will have big crystals of corundum, right? Big corundum crystals may be found, and big tourmaline crystals, big topaz like crystals you can find because the magma becomes enriched in rare elements, right? Not the common elements like silica, magnesium, aluminum like thing. Right? So the, sorry, magnesium, silicon, calcium like things. Aluminum, if you have enriched, that magma has the possibility for depositing for forming corundum, right? Sapphire, ruby like gems. And tourmaline, if you have boron, tourmaline must be found in such regions. Since they are cooling slowly, they grow into bigger sizes. That's what happened there. Okay, understood?
One more question.
Yeah.
The aluminium and silicons are in the periodic table very closer. So will the silicate the found in that mixture would be less comparing the aluminium to form the corundum?
Yes, that's right. So that is what we call the silica deficient. Silicates are deficient there. Silicon, the amounts of silica is less there compared to the amount of aluminum there. So therefore, instead of going for feldspar quartz-like minerals, they form corundum because aluminum makes complexes with oxygen there. So no silicates are formed, but oxides are formed. Spinel, corundum like minerals.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. In addition, you have the rare elements also like boron. Then you have the possibility for having tourmaline like things also, right? So whatever the silica available will be taken by those tourmaline like thing. Then again, aluminum amount will be enriched because aluminum is not going to many places in structures. So therefore, aluminum will be there enriched as a high aluminous magma. So then corundum can form. That's happening. Right. So this is very, very common magmatic processes which are taking place in the underground conditions, under crustal conditions, where you can see these mineral deposits form. So in terms of the ore deposits, this hydrothermal activity is also very, very important because in the world there are so many deposits found as a result of these hydrothermal activities, because this seawater, this penetrating seawater has large capacity for scavenging elements from the underlying rocks, because these underlying rocks are basalts. Because this basaltic magma comes up and dumps in the ocean floor here, a lot of basalt layers are produced. So these basalt layers can react with this heated water and get the elements, various elements, and then later on when they cool down, they can form in a form of mineral deposits. So these hydrothermal mineral deposits are very, very common in many parts of the country. Even our Seruvila deposit, Seruvila iron sulfide deposit, also hydrothermal type of a deposit, and it's one example for us to see this type of activities. Right. So in addition, this is all these things that we considered in connection with the ocean and crustal, continent and oceanic flow. And if we consider just the continental fragments only, this collision, continental collision, can cause some fractures in it, and it causes magma to rise up again within the continent itself. And also in addition, when some subduction or even collisional plates are moving, all the hydrous minerals which are available in this plate, for example amphibole, biotite like minerals, they release water. Why is that? They contain OH group, they contain water in their structures, so therefore they release water, and this water is also going up with magma, so they can also uh, come up with that sort of a solution, right? So this squeezed water, we call them squeezed water from the slab, they are also coming up with the magma itself, so that a lot of melting can happen in the upward, because when you introduce water uh, to the system, some drops of water, you can decrease the melting point of rocks. So that is a very, very important point. If you make a dry rock heated, right, it will melt at a certain degree, say 900 degrees. But if you melt the same rock by adding little bit of water, some drops of water, if you add into the system, you will see it will melt in 850 or 800, right? So that means that drops the melting point drastically. So that happens for melting rocks. So therefore it's very, very important whether you have water present in the rock or not. Okay, so that causes a lot of melting, because for melting, if normal conditions you need high temperatures, but if low temperatures are prevailing, then it can start melting if water is there. So therefore there will be a lot of magma produced, and at the same time there will be some water and other fluids are also migrating onwards. Once they go up, they will they will uh, they will enhance some deposition because of cooling conditions. And also the rising magma can melt the continental crust also, partial melting by the rising magma of the heat. So therefore it's possible for mineral deposits to form. In addition, this magma at the place of formation may be one composition, but later on when it comes up, it mixed with water and other fluids, and also it crystallizes some materials, some minerals while they are onward ascent, right? They can crystallize some materials. Then what happens is the prevailing magma, when it comes to this region, becomes very different composition than its initial composition. So that is what we call the fractionation. Okay, so the fractionation means the changing of composition of magma by crystallization or some other processes, where the compositional changes are happening from their travel from the deep interior to the shallow level. So this fractionated magma will have a very different composition, and when it touch the continental crust regions here, it will try to react with the crustal rocks. So it will assimilate. We call assimilation. That means the reactions with the host rock of this magma. Okay. So this fractionation also causes some minerals to form. So if this fractionation takes place in a chamber like thing, there is possibility for mineral deposit to form in this region, right? So likewise in the continental crust or in the base of the crust, there is possibility for mineral deposits to form also, right? So it's very common position, common scenario that happens in this type of collision or subduction environments, where sometimes, you know, when this magma gets fractionated, you will get enriched compositions of gold or silver or platinum group elements like that, right? So therefore there is possibility for such elements to be formed as mineral deposits also because of these changing compositions. So that is another mechanism of formation of these mineral deposits. So if you want to consider more on this fractionation and assimilation, you can go for little more details, but I think at the moment maybe you don't need much on this, but just to keep in mind that normal granitic magma or the granitic melt that is found in the Earth's interior, which goes up and then it can move, it can mix with other types of magma also, right? So that you will have a mixed magma. So once this mixed magma is formed, it will have a very strange composition, and that strange composition will cause some reactions with the host rock, surrounding rock. Okay, that is what you call the assimilation. So in this region, you will have some reaction zone. In this region, some reaction zone will be there. So original granitic melt will be changed, and then uh, they will react with the host rock to form a very different type of material, right? So in addition to that, while doing all these things, if you have a magma chamber, normal magma chamber, if this magma chamber is getting cooled, there is a possibility for fractionation. So as I mentioned, fractionation happen because of crystallizing forms. Because once the temperatures are dropping, some different minerals will get appear. Some different minerals will form. So once these different minerals form, the residual magma or the remaining magma, what we call is residual magma, becomes a very different composition, because already some materials are formed out of that original magma. So now you don't have original magma. It's a fractionated magma. So it's a new magma. So under new condition, this new magma also cooling may be forming a different type of mineral. So likewise, layer by layer, there can be formation of minerals. So one layer is the fractionation stage 1, and the second layer may be fractionation stage 2. Likewise, there can be some layers of mineral deposits formed. This we call cumulates, cumulate type minerals. Okay, cumulates, CUMULATIVE, cumulative type minerals, or cumulates, CUMULATES. So this type of a deposit we call cumulate type of a deposit. For example, in Africa, you have the Bushveld complex, very huge complex where you have a lot of chromite deposits, gold deposits, many types of, many dimensions of deposits are there, where you have mineral deposits formed as a result of this cumulate type deposits. Okay, so this genesis is related with fractionation and assimilation, this process. So initially basaltic magma, you have basaltic magma means it's rich in iron, magnesium, calcium, like dark minerals, dark materials. But later on, what happens is it becomes silica rich. So it becomes silica rich later on. Okay, due to these processes, fractionation and also assimilation. Fractionation and assimilation. So it becomes very silica rich when it comes to later conditions. So once this silica rich magma comes out to the surface, it's very violent. This eruption is very violent when it comes to eruption. So this is a fractionated magma coming out of, but while it's travel, already some mineral deposits are formed in these fractures in these regions. And finally, what you get is just a rock formed as an igneous rock formed. So this is this is uh, this is this is what you call fractionation and assimilation. Okay. Fractionation and assimilation. Okay. So anyway, this is a very popular hypothesis throughout the world, where you have the fractionation and assimilation happening. They are forming mineral deposits at the same time, very eruptive volcanoes. So you can see different volcanoes are produced as a result of this, right? So this is a kind of a mechanism, another magmatic type of mechanism. And another possibility is to have hydrothermal circulation again from magmatic water. There we are not considering the seawater, because in previous cases we considered for hydrothermal things some seawater, but now we are considering the entirely the crustal processes, where still you can have hydrothermal process. So hydrothermal, for activity to happen hydrothermal deposit is you need to have some groundwater infiltration. So cool groundwater from the top surface, which is going inward, percolating downwards. Okay. So this is after precipitation, normal precipitation, you have the groundwater flow. Some of this groundwater goes into deep interior. And there, because of these plutonic intrusions, that means this magma, this plutonic intrusion means it's magma. Like in the previous case, you have magma here. So when the groundwater coming down, like here, what happens? It gets heated because of this temperature, of this uh, Pluton, or we call Pluton means it's like a batholith, like magma body. So it gets heated, and when it gets heated, uh, heated groundwater can dissolve the material from these interior regions. So you have a lot of already deposited metals in some cases in the crust, right? Because of these processes, right? Because of some of these processes, already deposited uh, regions are there. So when the groundwater coming down, coming here, and it get heated, and also when it touches these deposits, the elements which are available in these deposits get dissolved in this groundwater. Okay, this groundwater gets dissolved, and there you have mineral deposits. Some solutions formed. So this heated groundwater, that means hydrothermal. It's once it is heated, then you can call it hydrothermal solution. So this heated groundwater dissolves metals, and they brings I mean the once this groundwater comes upward, they brings all these dissolved metals also to the upward regions, to the shallow regions. So here, for example, this heated ground water will come up to the shallow levels, and when it comes up to the shallow levels, even maybe they are reaching some few kilometers downwards, they get maybe cooled. In that case, in rock layers under the vein deposits, rock layers through the fractures, right? There can be some fractures in the rock. So into these fractures, this groundwater penetrates, and they have no more path to go. So with time, they get cooled, and this solution will precipitate the material. So we call them vein deposits. So these vein deposits are similar to the vein deposits that we can find in Sri Lanka also, in the graphite veins. For example, graphite deposits in our country are result of this type of deposits. So likewise, this heated groundwater can go up more and more, and deposit hydrothermal solutions. So these are another type of a mechanism where you can find the solutions of materials depositing as a mineral deposits. So these are some mechanisms. For example, especially gold, silver like vein type deposits, right, can be formed because of these heated hydrothermal solutions. So and also copper can be formed, right? Copper can be formed as a result of this. So that's why I mentioned that in Seruvilla in Sri Lanka, this copper deposit, gold and copper deposit is a hydrothermal type. So you have the hydrothermal type of deposits due to this type of mechanical activity. Okay, so I think uh, this up to here you can understand the points that I wanted to raise related with magmatic flows. So if you have any question, you can ask me, because we have covered quite a large amount of materials during this 2 hours time. So if you have a question, please ask me now.
Excuse me, sir. The
Yes.
basalt has the property of dissolving the other mineral.
Mhm.
Can you tell that which type of mineral is it? The low density or high density, and the metals or non-metal? What type? Can you tell a little more?
No, actually, it depends on the properties of metals. We can't say what will dissolve in which solution, but normally hydrothermal solution, depending on their temperature attained, because the hydrothermal solutions, they get heated. That means normal water, that they get heated into different degrees of temperatures. So they have the preferential attractions for copper or for gold or for other silver or something like that. But we cannot predict, actually. We cannot predict their solubilities. Depending on their solubilities only, they will get dissolved. So we can't say that if it is for 100 degrees Celsius, then whether gold is dissolved or not, something like that. It all depends on the surrounding conditions, prevailing conditions, and also the form of the element there, whether it's a valency form, right? Normally their metal form is there. So without bonding, for example, if they are bonded to sulfides, usually they carry or dissolve. Normally sulfides are not dissolved in those solutions, but if they are in sulfate form, they can easily get dissolved. For example, silver sulfate, if it is there, they can get dissolved in hydrothermal solution, but silver sulfide, they can't get dissolved. Not only that, the oxidizing condition or reducing condition, that means the redox conditions prevailing in that area, also determines whether which material will be dissolved and also which material will not be dissolved, right? And also if more oxidizing conditions are there, then more sulfates are there than sulfides. So therefore there is much possibility for gold, silver, copper like elements to be dissolved. Otherwise, reducing conditions, when reducing conditions are there, usually this copper, gold and other things prefer to have in sulfide form. So they don't get easily dissolved. Only from the magma itself, they will get deposited. So we will discuss about that thing in the next time, because these sulfides can get separated from the silicate magma as an immiscible melt, because sulfides and silicates are not mixing together. So therefore they are immiscible. So it's like water and oil, right? Once you mix oil and water, they are immiscible, right? They are not getting mixing. So these immiscible liquids get separated out in some cases, so that they will deposit in precious metals sulfides. So likewise, the various conditions, depending on the various conditions prevailing there, only this metal deposition is taking place.
Thank you, sir.
So any other question? Okay, so if no more questions, I think I will stop here for today. So we will continue in the next week with a little bit more, and then we can discuss some other aspects as well, right? So shall we stop for today now?
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so we will see you next week then.